Hi class, I wanted to give a lecture on the Grapes of Wrath to kind of help put it in context and give you some background information so you have that. So here we go. So a little bit about Steinbeck the writer. Some of you may know he was born in Salinas, California. There actually have a Steinbeck museum that you can visit. You can watch all of the films that have been made from the novels, and there's lots of other cool stuff as well. And as you know, he wrote a lot about this area, Monterey, the Central Valley, and places like that. And, you know, he wrote about the theme of injustice. A lot of people say that he was a socialist. I guess you could say that. He is known for his protagonist that a lot of people can relate to. You know, if you think of some of his other works. Let's see. Mice and Men, right? You got George and Lenny, Cannery Row. Basically, he writes a lot about the average person. Some of the awards he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. That's a very high honor. I think after him, might have been, who was the last American to win it? I think it was Toni Morrison. Speaking of the Grapes of Wrath, it was published in 1939, and it follows a family of, right, basically it talks about the Dust Bowl and how the people from the South, Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, places like that, had to basically leave their land and set out west, right, in hopes of this great new land where there was tons of jobs. But if you've read history, read the book, you know that that wasn't necessarily the case. And John Steinbeck actually wrote the book to, quote, put a tag of shame on the greedy bastards who are responsible for this. And he did lots of research. He actually lived with the workers for a while, I think for a year or two. I read that in his biography. And I remember taking a short story class at Stanislaus, and the professor at the time said, if you live in California, every Californian should read The Grapes of Wrath. So as I mentioned, you know, he did a lot of the research. He lived with them, and the people that Steinbeck met, right, were actually, those people actually inspired him to create the characters, and you'll see, I think, a lot of that with the dialogue that he uses. One of my favorite phrases is, praise God for victory. So you'll see some of that in there. Let's see. Let's focus on this. So you will notice the strong imagery and the moving descriptions that Steinbeck uses. And he begins most of his novels this way. You will definitely see it with The Grapes of Wrath. I think he begins with a description of Mice and Men. Most of his novels do. He has a knack for really strong, vivid descriptions. And as it says here, you will understand why the book is controversial and sometimes bad. Steinbeck received death threats and had to leave California after the novel was published. All right, so this is just a kind of a map where the book begins. The book begins in Oklahoma. And the Dust Bowl included parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico. I think I might have said Arkansas. That was a mistake. That's where my grandfather was born, but he actually, I think, spent some time in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl, and that's why I happened to say that. But they head out west, right? And that's some of the novel is going to capture some of that and some of the hardships that these families had to face. All right. Causes of the Dust Bowl. Well, there was a lack of crop rotation, as it says here, over farming of wheat and cotton. When you farm the same thing over and over, that's not good for the soil. And of course, the drought, as Steinbeck will depict very vividly on that first page, and also poor irrigation. I will post a video that kind of explains causes of the Dust Bowl as well. All right. The novel structure. Most of the chapters are short, and I think you'll notice that the chapters kind of stagger. There will be a chapter about what's going on, the people, and then there'll be a chapter here, as it says here, the inner chapters. They kind of talk about the forces that are working against the people as they migrate west. One of my favorite chapters is the one about a turtle. It's about a turtle crossing the road, and it's really good. It's really metaphoric. So I look forward to that. And as it says here, when you read the inner chapters, notice how Steinbeck's writing style enhances the topics. He masterfully uses literary techniques and lots of figurative language, right? Simile, metaphor, personification, to create these beautifully crafted chapters within the chapters. But you will notice that structure as we read the novel. So the original, speaking of the title, is from the book of Revelation, 14:19-20, which reads, "So the angel swung his sickle to the earth and gathered the clusters from the vine of the earth and threw them into the great winepress of the wrath of God. The wrath of God is his anger over the evil that is in the world." So there's some other stuff here to pay attention to. You might have seen some of these famous photographs of the Dust Bowl, right, by Dorothea Lange. So she did a wonderful job of capturing the migrant's strength, desperation, and as you see here, this is her most recognizable photograph. It's called The Migrant Mother. Steinbeck used some of these photos in other works like The Harvest Gypsies, and he was greatly appreciative of her talent and artistry. So where Steinbeck brings the migrant struggles to life in words, Lange brings their struggles to life in photos. And there's also some links that I can show you about the photos that I'll post as well. All right. So I think this was an important time for country music. Right? A lot of artists, once people moved out west, especially Bakersfield, there was a huge country music explosion, whether it be Buck Owens, Merle Haggard, right? And also this guy right here by the name of Woody Guthrie, and he was famous for this song, "This Land Is Your Land." So we'll get a little snippet of that if we can.
This land is your land, and this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me.
So that's important, right? Because you see here Steinbeck references sing-alongs as an important source of migrants' entertainment during their journeys. My grandfather used to talk about playing for quarters in halls in Bakersfield. He'd play music, have a little jar out, and people would put quarters in. All right. So this is just an excerpt from The Dust Storm, a Disaster. I guess we can go ahead and read it. On the 14th day of April of 1935, there struck the worst of dust storms that ever filled the sky. You could see that dust storm coming. The cloud looked death-like black, and through our mighty nation it left a dreadful track. The storm took place at sundown and lasted through the night. When we looked out this morning, we saw a terrible sight. We saw outside our windows where wheat fields they had grown was now a rippling ocean of dust the wind had blown. It covered up our fences, it covered up our barns, it covered up our tractors in this wild and windy storm. We loaded our jalopies and piled our families in. We rattled down the highway to never come back again. Pretty powerful stuff there. If you don't know what a jalopy is, I guess it would be like a hoopty, right? Okay. All right, little bit of trivia here. Steinbeck gave Route 66 its nickname, the Mother Road. Steinbeck kept a diary while writing The Grapes of Wrath that is now published. Steinbeck wrote in his diary that the book wasn't as good as he had hoped it would be. I beg to differ. Steinbeck wrote the novel 100 Days, and he described the process as harrowing. There is a movie version. I've seen it. Not bad. Pretty good, actually, with Henry Fonda. If I can find it, I will post it later. He had trouble giving the book a title, and it was his wife, Carol, who suggested The Grapes of Wrath, based on the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And several musicians have written songs honoring Tom Joad, including Woody Guthrie and Bruce Springsteen. Maybe I'll try to find some of those songs as well. But that's just a brief preview to help put it into context. Like I said, I like reading novels like this. You can read a history book about the Dust Bowl, or you can read a novel or a short story written during the time that it's happened, right? So I like to think of these types of works of fiction as history that comes alive. So thanks for listening.